Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yesterday we were talking about elections in America. That nation has had 250 years of a healthy and functioning democracy. They've had elections like clockwork every 4 years for the nearly 250 years. And the elections have been free, fair, and credible. You think that we in Africa have learned our lessons. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just have got to adapt it for our own purpose. And yet here we are. For some of us in Zimbabwe, 44 years after independence, in this day and age, and we are still failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections. Right now, our neighbor, Mozambique, has just had their elections last month, and the country is on fire. People protesting that those elections were not free, fair, and credible. And what makes it particularly distasteful is that our own Zimbabwe government, the Zanu PF-led government, are named in the rigged elections. The regime cannot deny that it played a part in Mozambique's rigged elections. This is tragic. Bad enough that Zanu PF is failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections in Zimbabwe. But it's totally unacceptable that the regime is exporting now its vote rigging skills to our neighboring countries and destabilizing the whole SADC region. This must be condemned in no uncertain language. This is an outrage. Ben, welcome to the program.
Good day. Thank you for having me on the program, and good day to our viewers. I want to start by saying, for those that didn't know, that Zimbabweans actually participated in the past Mozambique elections. The government of Mozambique and the government of Zimbabwe agreed to give Zimbabweans national identification documents of Mozambique, to Zimbabweans, so that Zimbabweans can cross the border and go and vote. For I'm guessing it's obviously to go and vote for Frelimo, which is the ruling party in Mozambique. So this is what has really sparked, this here protests in Mozambique. And I agree with you, democracy, especially in Africa, is something that is, that is not clearly defined. A lot of countries, they talk about a democratic process, free elections, and so forth. Clearly, they are not looking elsewhere to see how, this is being conducted. We have just finished, like you said, witnessing the American, elections, and peaceful. Everybody was just doing whatever they needed to do, and it was just a fast, smooth flowing process. It's very ridiculous. It's very ridiculous what is happening in Africa. That ever since our independence, most countries have never even had free, fair, and credible elections.
Yeah, it is tragic. But I think we need to clarify the issue of holding free, fair, and credible elections. We cannot say we don't know what it means. We should know. It's not rocket science. We do not have to reinvent the wheel. And so this issue of saying African countries, oh, we have got to have our own democracy, there is no such thing. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's just a pathetic excuse. Human rights are the same wherever you go, just as much as water is H2O wherever in the world you go. In fact, wherever in space you go, H2O is still H2O. Water is water. Human rights should be the same. The laws of thermodynamics are uniform, universally uniform, just as much as human rights are universally uniform. The right to every individual to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country should not have to depend on which country you come from. Everyone should have that right. Other African countries have successfully held free, fair, and credible elections. We have no excuse for failing to do so. And yet we have got countries like Mozambique that have got their own problem. They failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. I think what is outrageous here, and which we must focus on, is that Zimbabwe is exporting its vote-rigging skills to other nations. That is what is so totally unacceptable. Here is a short video clip of somebody talking about how the people there in Mozambique have been so outraged by the vote rigging, they've closed the border.
Mozambican azvinomira musho kuno kwakomana paMozambican hapana kuchipa ya Mozambican haina kuchipa bhodha ravhara vatora vabata matrucks vakatena around matrucks akamanikidzwa kunze must turn around vanhu ivava vanhu povhu kuvhara road nemaside tipa kutora maside tipa kwavhara road ndo road bhodha riri pamberi apa vawaridzwa vese makidzi mvaturu ya hanzi Zanu ngaiende free rimwe munome yakadyiwa zvaisida kuenda hapakaipa nyika yese it's in chaos baba pakaipa.
So they've had rioting ever since last month's elections. I think what we cannot accept, what every Zimbabwean should condemn here, is Zanu PF's involvement. Zanu PF cannot deny that it was involved. And yet, some of the Zanu PF apologists are the ones who are encouraging the Mozambican authority to use force to stop the rioting. This is an article in one of the local papers where a Zanu PF apologist, Derek Kuto, is asking the Mozambican authority to exert maximum force to put an end to these disruptions, the disruptions of the rioting. This is totally unacceptable. Zimbabwe must answer for its role in this tragic affair in Mozambique. It is a tragic affair, and it's an affair that should have been avoided. That is what I find so ridiculous. And it is a pity that SADC have allowed Mnangagwa to get away with the rigged elections last year. And I hope that SADC will have the guts to hold Zanu PF to account for its role in what is happening in Mozambique. That is absolutely of paramount importance. We cannot allow this madness to continue.
I agree. There is no, no way Zanu PF can refuse to say they don't have a hand in this when the evidence was clear, and when they allowed the people of Zimbabwe to go, and vote in Mozambican elections, and Frelimo was also in Zimbabwe before the elections to come and get the tactics of how to go about this whole process. I mean, the evidence is clear. Zanu PF has been going around, all countries, showing that their solidarity for these parties, and trying to influence other countries' elections. We had in Botswana where Patrick Chinamasa was there, doing what Zanu PF does. But fortunately for Botswana, it has strong institutions and it held firm. South Africa the same. They went again, and they tried to do their shenanigans, and the South African people, citizens, they spoke up, that same very time, and they said, no, 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 we are not going to allow you to be in our country and mess about with our election process. You have failed. You have been labeled, for your vote rigging schemes. Please do not come back here. And I think, personally, from my point of view, I believe this is what cost the ANC the majority, and the Botswana ruling party, a win of the elections, because people were fed up to say, now you want to bring Zimbabwean shenanigans into our country. And they rightfully stopped. Unfortunately for Mozambique, they had weak institutions and they fell for it. But the evidence was clear and it was broadcast. This is why technology is a beautiful thing. The whole world could see the Zimbabweans lining up, queuing to get identifications. And they actually even came out showing that they'd actually managed to vote. This is what, actually fueled this protest. Zanu PF is responsible for what is happening in Mozambique. Zimbabwean government is involved in what is happening in Mozambique. And unfortunately, I don't know what SADC will do and will say, but I heard, sometime, I think this weekend or the next, they are going to be meeting to discuss this. And it must be said, if they are to be truthful to themselves, it must be said, Zimbabwe, you are the one that caused all this.
Well, here is a video clip where the South African broadcasting was condemning Zanu PF's involvement in the recent Botswana elections.
To perform badly. And I think the other issues are bread and butter issues. Botswana were not happy in terms of the direction the country was taking, the corruption, the association with Zimbabwe also, and the Zimbabwean Zanu PF officials being so brazen in going to that country during election, posting on social media their support for the BDP. Yes, we know they are former liberation organization, but don't rub it in, particularly when you know that in your own country you have issues. And therefore, I think the other issue that is becoming a problem it is the Zanu PF in the region. It's becoming notorious, but secondly, at the time its president is the leader of the SADC. You know, he even, congratulated Mozambique even before the Electoral Commission of Mozambique could pronounce results. And therefore, these issues, leaders are arrogant, they think don't count, and they tend to undermine the voters. And sometimes the voters are watching every move. And I think the issue of arrogance, the issue of sidelining those who supported you when it was not fashionable to do so, always leads to disaster.
Sure. And I suppose a sobering lesson for future leaders. Speaking of that, Duma Boko, I imagine is going to be...
So I have got to confirm that the condemnation of Zanu PF within Zimbabwe, in Mozambique, and in the whole SADC region is something that we owe ourselves. We have got to condemn it because that is exactly what we don't want. It's bad enough that Zimbabwe is a failed state, all because we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. But for us to be exporting the same problems to our neighboring countries is totally unacceptable. But to end this on a more positive note, there are reports that the Mozambican army is beginning to side with the ordinary people. Here is a video clip of the Mozambican army and POVO involved in the ongoing protests. Ben, what do you think of that one?
I believe that is a very, very positive, positive note indeed. It's a beautiful sight where you find that, the army originally is supposed to protect its citizens and its country, and rightfully they are doing that. This shows that, there is unity of purpose, from both concerned parties. It's very, very beautiful to see. Not that I say let us protest. I think protests are the last resort, but when you're backed to the wall, people will push back, and people are pushing back. And I also heard that, they have since closed the South African Mozambican border as well. So I think they have managed to block all borders. It's now turning into something that will be, quite intense, as we progress. It's going to be something to see. But again, we are back to the question to say, why are we as Africans failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections? Why is Zanu PF, involved in evil schemes to undermine the will of the people? Not only the Zimbabwean people, but now they have gone to an extent of going to undermine other people, other countries, a democratic process. And to come back and to conclude, to the guy that wrote this article, I think you really need to define what democracy is. And to answer the question to say, why did Zanu PF allow Zimbabwean citizens to go and vote in the Mozambican, election? Why was that done? That is is the right of Mozambicans to exercise, not Zimbabweans. Zimbabweans have their own elections. Mozambicans have got their own elections. Why do we have to go and meddle in their affairs? And rightfully, ZANU PF is accountable to what is happening in Mozambique today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. I think in conclusion, what I can only say is I sincerely hope that the people of Mozambique are now working together with the army, the police, and all Mozambicans to address this fundamental problem of bad governance in that country. There cannot be any doubt that since Mozambique's independence in 1975, that country has failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. That is a matter of historic record. Let's hope that this coming together of the people, the army, and all the other stakeholders will finally resolve this issue. The right of every Mozambican to a meaningful say in the governance of the country is paramount. It is essential. It is the very essence of good governance. Why it has taken so long to get there beggars belief. But let's hope that this time the people of Mozambique will finally get there. They've got other serious economic and political challenges the nation must face. But they've got to deal with this basic problem, how to govern ourselves. And to be failing to do so in this day and age beggars belief. And let me say and emphasize that it is bad enough that the people of Mozambique are having problems, their own political problems. It is unforgivable that another country, another government, not just individuals, the government of the day should be interfering in their internal affairs to the point of stirring up all this trouble. No one can deny that Zanu PF was involved in Mozambique's rigged elections, recent rigged elections. The two, Zanu PF and Frelimo in Mozambique, have collaborated in the past to rig each other's elections. This is not the first time we have heard of Mozambicans being allowed to vote in Zimbabwe, and now Zimbabweans being allowed to vote in Mozambique. This madness must come to an end. I am looking forward to the day when Mozambique can turn over a new page and finally say they've resolved the issue of free, fair, and credible elections. The issue of the right of every citizen to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. Other countries have done it. South Africa has managed to hold free, fair, and credible elections ever since the end of apartheid in 1994. Botswana has managed to hold free, fair, and credible elections since 1966. It's not rocket science, just a lack of the political will. Let's hope the people of Mozambique will finally see the need to address this fundamental issue once and once for all. Thank you very much for those of you who were able to join us this afternoon. And thank you very much, Benjamin, for leading in the discussion. And we'll be posting in future the link for those of you listening who would like to comment or join in the discussion. I hope you'll be able to do so again. Join us tomorrow, 8 o'clock Zimbabwe time, or 6 p.m. UK time. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night.